experience, which is definitely happening more during these times. So I'm excited to introduce Claire Ami from the Career Center, and she'll get rolling.
All right, so thank you all for taking time to join us today. This is the second in our series of 15-minute webinars. So it's just a little snapshot of what we have to offer and kind of give you some quick tips and tricks as you're kind of getting ready for that digital interview. So excited to kind of share some of those with you all. So, let me get this. So just a couple of notes. I don't know if you've all been in WebEx before, but just so you kind of know kind of where the layout of the land is. In the bottom area of your screen, there's a little pop-up if you hover there that has a little comment bubble there. And if you push that, it opens up the chat. And if you've got any sort of questions or you're having technical issues, you can type in a question there. There are two other folks on the call, so Danny, as well as one of my other colleagues in the college or in the Career Center, Janet, who can help kind of if you've got any questions there. But for the majority of our presentation today, we're going to ask that you keep muted just to minimize the feedback, especially since we're recording this, just so that other folks can reference it later. But if you've got questions, there's a little button you can push that has a little hand raise, or just type something down in the chat. And there'll be a time at the end as well where we can take questions, but just so that we can hear everybody. For now, we'll keep you muted. So just so you have an idea of what the agenda is going to look like today, we're just kind of going to talk a bit about setting the stage, practicing, researching what you should be doing in your space to kind of get yourself set up for that digital interview. And then we have one of our students on the line, Michaela, who's going to be jumping in for the student perspective, kind of talking about the biggest challenges that go along with digital interviews, and then question and answer. So a lot squeezing into this 15 minutes. So I always like to start with this. When you are getting ready for an interview, whether it be a digital one or one in person, it's really important to kind of get in the mindset of, you know, you're here for the job hunt. It's a little different. Confidence is key. I like to think like this. I love this little girl here. That's, you know, you're hoping all is going well, just like how I'm feeling about this interview today. So with you all. So webinar, go well. So just like her, you gotta get yourself in the mindset, think positively, be optimistic, and just know, you know, there may be flukes along the way, but if you set yourself up right at the beginning, practice, that sort of thing, you shall be good. So the first thing is in regards to your video feed. So it's important that you test the quality of your webcam with either a friend, or you can do that with us at the Career Center. I love this photo. I don't know if anybody has seen this online, but this poor news anchor, you know, was streaming, having a live conversation, and he unfortunately had his webcam pointed a little bit far too down. And you can see he's wearing shorts and not wearing pants, which would have been okay if he had angled just a little bit more. So it's important to test the quality of your webcam before you jump in. Also, you'll find that each of the different platforms kind of has a different view. So like, for example, in WebEx versus Zoom versus a Teams meeting, you're going to find that your webcam shows something a little bit differently. So just make sure you practice that with a friend beforehand, because you don't want to end up in a mistake like this poor guy. The other thing is note how your face appears. So there's a really cute picture in the bottom left of our awesome staff. You'll notice that my picture is super white. So one of the things I did recently was actually move where my washed out, because where I was located, the way that the light was coming in from the window washed out my face. So I actually moved my desk to a better position recently so that I have a more natural color. So you just want to kind of pay attention to how your face is appearing. Are you also kind of, you know, structured right there in the center? How does that kind of look? So this is just another bit of that. So setting the stage is super important as well. So how you've got your background set up. You don't want too many things. There's a great example. The rock star in the bottom right has got all sorts of knickknacks and things like that. Almost too much. I think if I were on a phone call with him, I'd be super distracted. The girl on the far top right has gotten, I don't know what she's been shopping for, but been to a carnival perhaps. And then at the bottom left, you'll see somebody who's kind of got their laptop on their legs. That view is probably not going to be great at all. Maybe going to be kind of like the girl in the middle, which is dark, kind of like from a horror movie. So just be really mindful of what you've got kind of around you. And it's okay to use the backgrounds that come with softwares as well. You'll see up there for those interviews. I would caution you though, because allowing you to kind of see into your house also gives that employer kind of a viewpoint of a little personality because you aren't in person. And so I think sometimes it's kind of nice to see people's background, what they've kind of got in their backdrop. Just be mindful of what you've got there. You probably want to have a pool as your background, like the girl in the top left. They're going to be like, is she always going on vacation? So just be kind of mindful of what you've got, what you choose as your background, and we can kind of help you with that as well. So here's an example. So where I'm sitting right now, so I've got kind of a chair set up with a pillow behind me, so I'm kind of in a comfortable position. I've also got my desktop set up where it's straight on, you can kind of see me. I'm framed well. A couple of things in the background just to kind of add a little bit of interest, as well as some plants and some greenery. But I would say, you know, whatever makes you feel good. Don't have too many things in the background. You know, usually the rule is one personal item, but you know, the more homey or, you know, but also business professional you can make it, the better. And we can kind of help you with those Zoom backgrounds too in the Career Center. The other thing is make sure you test your audio. You know,
that ain't gonna happen.
Right.
Right on cue. See? So we were just talking about audio, so that's perfect timing. So one of the things that you'll notice is sometimes if your audio isn't proper, you'll get like an echo. Don't panic. You can always mute yourself and come back. A lot of times, usually that'll fix the vocal volume. If you know you've got issues in the area of where you're going to be doing your interview, you could also consider putting on some headphones. That's totally acceptable as well. Or if you've got some of the ones that like go in your ears. But you'll want to test your audio levels just to make sure you have a good, clear interview and that people can hear you. And that's the same is true with your video ones as well. You want to make sure you have good, solid internet connection. So some other considerations. I would recommend closing all other open windows that you have on your computer when you're doing your video interview, because sometimes those slow down your video because you got other things going on. Could have Outlook beeping in the background. You don't want that. Also put your phone away so that you're not getting texts in the middle and getting distracted. If possible, go somewhere quiet. Pets, kids, the doorbell, those are all a distraction. I mean, they do happen, but for the sake of an interview, you might want to ask a neighbor to go walk your pet or whatever it might be so that you can have a quiet space. And then the other thing is because you do have the ability to kind of have things a little off screen, make sure that you're comfortable. Have some water nearby. I call it the off-screen perks. If you know you're in a cold location, you know, have a blanket on your bottom. No one can see it. So just some things to be thinking about. And then of course, be yourself. So dress professionally. This is an interview, even though it is a digital interview. I would recommend logging on early. If you do not have the software that they've chosen to do these digital interviews, I would recommend going and downloading it early, practice. Also be understanding because there could be hiccups on their end as well as on your end. They may not be as familiar with the with using whatever the platform they are on as well, and then maintain confidence. Doing a digital interview is not easy. And there will be hiccups, and it's all about, being friendly, smiling, being yourself, making the eye contact with the digital camera, which is really difficult. And then, look for cues. The other thing is with those video interviews, you could have multiple people on the other end, and it's hard to sometimes tell whose turn it is, and that's totally okay if there's a pause between, that sort of thing. There's a fine art for that interviewing. And as long as you maintain confidence and be friendly and smile, you should be good. So the other thing is I have our student on the line. So Michaela, if you want to unmute yourself, just maybe talk for a minute.
Hi guys.
Are you here?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm Michaela. I am graduating in just a few weeks. I'm a senior this year, and I've worked in the Career Center for the past few years. And I just got a job offer, which is awesome, but it's different right now with the process of interviewing and stuff. I didn't have a virtual like video interview, but all of my interviewing and stuff has been like strictly phone calls. And so it's very different. You're used to going in and like meeting the person who's interviewing you and even other people within the company and like seeing their location and just the workspace and the culture. And so I wasn't able to do that at all until actually just yesterday I got to go and meet the person who's been interviewing me and coordinating everything, and then shadow some of the people that I'll be working with, just so I can actually see the culture and stuff before I could accept it. But obviously, there was a lot of they weren't just bringing everybody into their location for interviews. You had to, get the job offer first before you were able to before they invited me to go into the office. So it's just a very different process than what a lot of people are used to. And so you just have to be mindful of that and see if you can, still get to see the culture and the people you'll be working with in a different way than normal. So, yeah.
Thanks, Michaela. And Michaela will be on the line for other questions after too. So if other folks have got questions for her, we're very excited that she's got a job lined up. So, like I said, for the sake of time, this is kind of like a snip. One of the things that we can certainly help you out with or practicing those questions, common questions they might ask you, as well as Michaela kind of talked, if you're trying to figure out the culture of what your workplace environment is going to be, you might also phrase some of the questions that you're asking. Those are going to be really important as part of your interview. Some do's and don'ts. Like I said, we can kind of help you with setting up your background, practicing those interviews. Also, researching for your interview is going to be very important. So looking up who those folks are, as well as the company, just so you kind of have a better idea, because a digital interview is a long distance one. So you've got to really kind of work a little bit more to get to know that company and for them to get to know you. So the other push I'll have on here is we've got a Handshake, which is our job platform, which is a great place for you to go jump on to look for jobs, internships, especially if you're looking this summer. And then of course our website. So we offer digital appointments through Starfish. So you can either hop to our website and get there or through the Starfish portal, which is on the main site. So just a push for the rest of the webinars that we've got going. Like I said, this is just it's like career webinar on steroids, super quick, only 15 minutes. So first we've had one on Handshake and LinkedIn, which is available for if you want to watch it. And then we're of course, going through this one right now. And then we've got 3 more in the future. We've got one about LinkedIn Learning, some experiences with internships. And then the last one is actually going to be in partnership with the Colorado Springs folks, the downtown folks, and they're going to be talking about evolving workplace in the future. So at this point, right on time, we wanted to give you the opportunity to ask some questions. So you can either unmute and ask your question or type it in the chat box. And Danny is going to kind of help, as well as Janet, facilitate those. So I will open it up to you all. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to.
Hey, Claire, I'll kind of start us off here. So, should I prepare any different, if I were a student, should I prepare any differently for a virtual interview than maybe an in-person or phone interview?
I would say your questions that you probably ask are going to be similar to your in-person interview, but I would say to prepare for your virtual interview, that's a good question, thanks Danny, would be to make sure you're practicing that and connecting with us if you need some help. I would also, like I said, kind of fine tune your questions to ask about the company, since you're not having that in person. Set yourself up in a good space. Do a little bit more research. I mean, I think they're pretty similar. That's a good question. Do you, Janet, anything to say to that?
Yeah, can I? Yeah, can I add a little something too?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
I
for it.
would say that I've worked with a couple of students recently who, they're interviewing virtually for jobs, and one of the big questions that they're being kind of asked is, how do you work remotely? Surprise, surprise, right? So I think, we need to kind of keep, if as you're interviewing, for positions, think about what the job is that you will be doing with that company if you're hired, and what are the skills, that maybe, and other than COVID-19 situations that you wouldn't necessarily be using. So, feel comfortable with that piece of it. That would be one suggestion.
Thank you, Janet. Appreciate it. And Janet is one of our career folk. She's our career specialist. So she meets with majority of the students who make appointments with us. So if you want to meet with Janet and talk more, get on Starfish. Are there any other questions? What are people seeing? Like, oh, here. Do you have any advice for how to greet the employer, start the meeting? Saying it's nice to meet you, still a normal thing to say virtually since you're not actually meeting them face to face. Ooh, good question. I would say it's totally fine. You could even kind of laugh it off and say, it's really nice to meet you. I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person at some point. I think it's still great to say that, even though you're not there in person. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say don't think of it differently in terms of, there's still that time to have that potential, what I call chit chat time. Say you were at an actual office, you would probably have to walk to someone's office. And so that 2-minute walk, minute walk will still be a time where you can, talk about what's going on, what's happening. I think a positive of what's happening out there right now is we're all going through very similar things in terms of working remotely, not being able to stay as connected to friends in person. So you can kind of talk about that and connect that way. So just an example of something that you can kind of talk about.
Can I add another thing too?
Yeah, go for it.
I loved what you were talking about, like earlier in your slideshow there about testing your tech. That's really important. I would also say, and maybe you said this and I missed it. I'm sorry if I did, but have a backup plan, right? Because you can test your tech and be great at it, and the interview can still go south. And maybe like Claire did say, it was something on their end that got messed up. But just have a game plan in place so you don't go into that major panic mode when things aren't working quite the way they should technologically.
Thanks. That's another reason to kind of hop onto the tech a little early too, because if you are having issues, like for example, say it's a digital interview with a video interview and you just cannot get your webcam to work, or your internet's down, you got to hop on your phone and hop onto that video platform, make sure that you kind of got that set up so that you can do a phone in, and then kind of explain to them that, hey, I'm really sorry this is happening. I think everybody is, at this point is given a little grace because of that. So we know that tech issues come up. It's just how you handle them and have them kind of, like Janet was saying, how you have kind of a backup plan ready to go. Questions about having a digital interview? The other thing to consider, and this is what I've done at my house too, is if you are on a Wi-Fi, you may want to, just for this interview, have a long Ethernet cable that you plug into the router just so you've got some solid signal. That's, like I said, on the tech side of things, but just something to be thinking about is as you're kind of testing, depending on the time of the day, you may have, the Wi-Fi signal for wherever you're at may not be that great. I can tell you in my space, there's a lot of people who get on around lunchtime and suddenly, the Wi-Fi signal is not that great. So I'm actually hardwired into my wireless router, just so that I can have good solid signal. That may be something also to consider, what your Wi-Fi signal might be for that particular interview.
Claire, thank you for offering this, first of all. Secondly, do you notice with the virtual interviews that people are going to more or less presentations as part of their interview process?
I might have to turn that over to Janet or Danny. Have you all?
Yeah, I think that'll depend on the industry. So, for example, we in higher education, we still had we did one candidate about a month ago do a presentation over WebEx and still had that. But I think the majority of entry level roles out in the business field or other areas, it'll probably still have that just typical interview feel where it won't be a presentation. A presentation won't be expected. But that'll definitely depend industry to industry and business to business. And if a student wants to prep and get ready, we can definitely do practice rounds with them on presenting as well.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing that, it kind of depends, like Danny said, exactly the type of job that you're interviewing for. But also kind of keep in mind that it could be a one-on-one, it could be a panel, just as, those are some similarities that you would see if you weren't doing it virtually anyway. So those kind of things are still gonna apply, I think. And you definitely, I posted a note there, but don't forget to send your thank you notes after to everybody that you interviewed with.
Yeah, and the other thing is you, like Danny was saying, it's definitely important to practice, because even you've probably seen all those blunders that are online. You don't want to share the wrong window, especially if you're doing a presentation. So it's vitally important that you practice the screen sharing, because it's a little different in each different video platform that's out there, and you don't want to accidentally share something you're not supposed to or want to. For example, your Facebook page or something in the middle of your interview. So it looks like we're getting a question about thank you notes. Would we email a thank you note or an actual card? So I would recommend, just for the sake of speed, I would send an email thank you note. Also, because so many folks are at this point working remotely, they may not be in the office to receive a card. So I think an email thank you note would be ideal at this point. And that's where it's important to kind of take some notes while you're doing your interview as well, just so you kind of have some things to kind of write back in that thank you note and say, hey, these are the top things that I think that I bring to your company, that sort of thing.
So a good place to mention anything you might have forgotten to say, or just to really reiterate your, what Claire said, your interest in the position as well.
Looks like Samantha also has a tip, which is make sure that your laptop or electronic device that you're using for the interview is fully charged. So that's a good one as well. So in addition to good Wi-Fi, you gotta make sure that all of your devices are fully charged, so you don't have it dying in the middle of the. But it's not coming from experience. Any other questions? So if you don't have any other questions, and if you've got additional questions, I'll kind of stay on the line as well afterwards. So if you want to send us, put something in the chat, if you want to talk privately, or you can, like I said, you're welcome to make an appointment with us in Starfish. Our next webinar will be next week on Tuesday at 2 p.m. It'll be about LinkedIn Learning, so come join us for that. Thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully this was a great little quick 15 minutes. There's a lot we could say more on this topic, but we, when it comes to interviewing, but we wanted to get it done out to you all in 15 minutes so that you had enough, so you could get on with whatever else you got going on. So Stay safe all. And like I said, we'll kind of hang out here if you've got additional questions, but otherwise we'll see you for our next webinar, hopefully.